morning and welcome to the Board Gaming Breakfast. I hope everyone is having a great Thursday. Thursday, bright and early this morning. Great weather outside. The Board Game Breakfast is presented by the McMeeples. This is a weekly live stream that I like to do in the mornings where I go live and talk about board games for 30 minutes. Segments you can expect to be featured on every morning broadcast until otherwise told is we'll talk about a game of the day, then we'll add a random mechanic into that game based on our wheel of mechanics that we will spin, and then we'll finish with a brainstorming a game in 5 minutes. So now that the kind of overview is out of the way, thank you for all that watch every day, and those that are new, welcome. Hope you get some value out of this content. And with that, let's get started. So today's game of the day is called Explorers, and this is a flip and write that we just got in a trade recently that I've enjoyed our first play of. So Explorers is by Phil Walker Harding, and I'm not going to do a full rules teach because that's not the content that I'm looking to do here, but I will link some really good rules teaches in the comments below when this clip gets re-uploaded to YouTube. But Explorers is I already said it, but it's a flip and write game that's played over 4 rounds. And what you're doing is you'll build this map of tiles that will sit in this little frame. And so you'll have that on the ground, and then each game, everyone will select the same 4 tiles and put them in the same orientation. So then you'll have this grid of 4 tiles sitting in your board. And you'll start at the closest city, which each tile has 1 city here. And you'll cross that off, and then turns are taken where the active player will draw one of these scroll pieces, and there's 8 of them total. And they'll draw it and choose which terrain type they'd like to mark off on their board. And so if I was the active player and I chose the desert, then every other player has the option to do either the mountain or the desert as well, but less markings on it. And so what's going to happen is you get to mark, as the active player, I'll get to cross off 3 of those matching type squares on my board, and all the other players can either do 3 of the terrain that I didn't choose or 2 of the same terrain that I have selected. And you'll do 7 turns of that, and then you'll score for the round, rinse and repeat, and at the end of 4 rounds, whoever has the most points wins. And so there are a bunch of different ways on the backside of the tiles to have point scoring for the game to change up, what conditions you're going for, as well as there are 3 standard tiles that will go in the top of your board for scoring as well. And so if you look up here, these will fit into these 3 slots on the top, which will be static scoring for most games. And there's a bunch of different symbols on each of the tiles that relate to a different way that they want to be scored. And that, in a nutshell, is Explorers. And so the reason I brought it to the table, other than the fact that we played it for the first time last night, was the idea that your board isn't set for a terrain and that you're building it each game that you play means that there's so much variety in the maps that you can create. And so those modular tiles is a unique principle that I haven't seen in any other roll and write games to my knowledge. So it means that each play is going to be slightly different. And then when you play the advanced variant of using some of the leftover tiles that weren't picked as additional scoring criteria, makes the replayability of the game a lot higher than most other roll and writes. I'm not or flip and writes or whatever the blank and write genre style game. I'm not the biggest fan of them like long term, and they don't stay in our collection just because after you played them 5 or 6 times, the core loop of the game feels played out, and there's not a ton of feeling like of change to the game, and it gets stale for our tastes, unfortunately. But I think what they're doing here with the the modular aspect of the boards means that this one will probably have a longer shelf life in our collection. The other thing that I really like is this I cut you choose style mechanic for each of the tiles, as the active player having some agency in choosing which terrain that you're going to mark off is a really fun puzzle, and I really like the fact that the non-active players still have that choice of being able to select either terrain, but there is a slight limitation if you go for the opposite. If you go for the same terrain as the active player, that decision space is really it's definitely my favorite part of this game, and it makes not only the turns are very quick, but it adds a level of control where I think it would be kind of tough if it turned into almost like a hate drafty style game if you were locked into picking the other non-selected terrain that the active player doesn't pick. And so that is the game of the day. It's Explorers by Phil Walker Harding. It's produced by Ravensburger. And let me know in the comments below what your favorite mechanic is from this game, or if you've played any of the advanced variants, what your favorite scoring condition is. Thank you for stopping by, and that was today's game of the day. Pause to make cutting up easier. So next what we're going to do is we'll take the game of the day, and we will go over to our wheel of mechanics. And what we have here is a wheel of 63 different game mechanics that we will spin, and it will prompt us with a random mechanic that we're going to fit into Explorers. So we got track movement fitting into Explorers. So let me jump back into OBS. And we got Explorers and track movement. So let me write that up at the top. And so for those that are new to this segment, what we'll do is we'll pull up our 5-minute timer on our phone and have to ideate how we might go about adding track movement into the game Explorers. So we're going to hit the start button, and now we'll begin. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the mechanic, track movement relates to having a bunch of different tracks, whether they're resources or victory points or just any sort of like notch where you're slowly moving cubes up, and those are triggered by different actions that you do. And so track movement is used a lot in like tech trees would be a spin-off of track movement. Resource tracks would be track movement. Planet Unknown has a really great track feature that I'll explain in a different video. And with that explanation out of the way, we'll redraw our Explorers board and see how we can modify it. So when it's blank, it looks like this, but I think we'll keep that core principle of the map the same. And it's got a bunch of different spots here of the terrain type. So we'll keep the map, and I'm stalling because I'm letting my brain process what we're going to do next. And I understand that I didn't do the grids evenly because these two are missing a fourth. There we go. All right, so for track movement, I think the best way to do it is to scrap this scoring condition, and I would probably just build off of the framework that the game I just mentioned, Planet Unknown, has of there are four different terrains. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. So I would probably just make the same colored tracks here. And so instead of having these modular and different, you'd have different tracks that you have your blue for water, you have your grass for green, your desert, and your mountain tracks here. And so not only are you marking off bonuses here in the like main map area, but you're also, when you take, maybe we'll do a little tweak on it so it's not a direct reskin of Planet Unknown. But the terrain that you don't go with, you get to move that track up as well. And so you're picking which, so at the end of the game, you'll score maybe for each track, like there'll be victory points, thresholds 3, 4, and so you'll score victory points for each of that terrain type that gets crossed off. But to move up on the track, you have to, it's the opposite of what you choose. And so that would be how I would implement track movement into Explorers. And so we have about a minute 45 left. So I'm just going to pause the timer because I think this is a fleshed out enough. And so instead, so maybe in addition to these scoring, you would add in, like, I guess this would be an expansion content for Explorers, but you'd have the terrain tracks, and the theme of it would be when you're not exploring the actual lands, you're back at home resource searching. And so to recap how we've added in track movement into Explorers is you would keep the same exact game, you would just add, maybe I can do a different color. Try red. Ooh. So you would just add this board here. Does it turn red? Oh yeah, there we go. So focusing on the red section, that's what we would be adding to the game for track movement. And what we would do is there would be maybe a few different tier levels. So let me just, so there's 27, no, so there's 4 rounds of 7 turns, so that's 28. And 28. So if we made the track 8, so every 2 movement you would be able to score for it. So it's 32. So maybe we have to add a few more to get to the 3 and 4. So this would link into that, and that. So I've done some tidying up to help with the overall explanation. But to rewind, our challenge today was to add track movement to Explorers. How we've done that is we added a research track system into the game. And so when selecting the tiles for which terrain type as the active player you're going to use, if you will move up on the track of the terrain type that you didn't select. So for example, if this was the tile I drew and I was the active player and I chose the desert, I would move up 1 on the water track, which is labeled as blue in our image. So we'd be up by 1, or I guess 2. But we'd move up the blue track. And that would be the only added mechanic that we'd add for the game. And so at the end of the game, you'll score points for each track that you've moved up on. And so this probably would be, how I test this is I wouldn't change any of the base game rules. I would just print out a research sheet with the different colors, and I would start with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So like the 10 spaces on the track to test that. And so how I test that out is the next time we played Explorers, I would ask the group that we're playing with, hey, I have this additional module that I've been concepting. Would anyone be interested in testing it out with me? And if there was group consent or majority vote that was into it, I'd explain that same principle of all you're doing is you're bumping up the track of the terrain type that you didn't choose for the round. And at the end of the game, the number of X's of that type that you've crossed off in your biggest section, maybe, well, I'll start with, the number of X's you cross off of that terrain type, you score that many points. And we'd play a full round through and see what the scoring is, see if it's too lopsided, see if it was even fun to, have that decision space of, oh, I want to move up that track because I've crossed off 30 blues or 30 grassland. And that would be how I'd add track movement into Explorers. So I'd love to hear your comments or your thoughts in the comments below of what you would do to add track movement to Explorers. Would it be the same style? Would it be different? Feel free to leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. Thank you for coming to today's video, and I hope to hear from you soon. All right, now for the last part of today's live stream is we will get a new sheet of paper and we will pack up Everstone. No, not Everstone. That was Freudian. So Everstone is the game I've been working on and the game I'm trying to bring to market. But we are packing up Explorers, different E game. All right. Boom. That is closed. All right, so let's switch over to gameideagenerator.com. .net. Let's make a game.net. All right, starting from the. Oh, we forgot to put these in. All right, boom. That's in. That's away. All right, we are ready to rock for the last segment. Got to scroll down though. All right, gonna start with the intro to the segment. So thank you for anyone watching live, bearing with me. Just to keep everyone in the loop, my goal is for the live streams to have 3 videos to YouTube that I can post on a weekly basis as I get that content engine set up. But the live streams will be a little wonky, so I appreciate the people that sit through them. And if you don't like the live streams and just want to watch the video format, totally understand. That'll be a little more cleaned up and polished. But these live streams are the raw, uncut world of Sam. All right, with the rambling, that does not look yummy in the OBS, so we maybe need to. Oh, that's because we have a different setup. Boom. All right, we're ready to rock. All right, last video of today. All right, welcome to the last segment of today's video. So what we are doing, for those of you who are new to the channel, is we like to finish off the morning with designing a game in 5 minutes based on a randomly generated prompt. So what we have here is we're on letsmakeagame.net, and they have a really good tool called the game idea generator. And what it will provide for us is a genre, rule, setting, and theme to design around. And so once I've finished the explanation, we'll click the generate button to give us our prompt. We'll start the 5-minute timer because we have to limit the amount of, got to add a little pressure to the system. And we'll see what game concept we come up with. After the 5 minutes go off, I'll recap with where we're at with the concept, kind of button it up to give a summary of what we designed, and then I'll finish with talking about the steps I would use to try and take it from concept to getting it on the table, either in Tabletop Simulator and have it tested virtually, or if there's enough that I can do to scrap together parts to get it played at the table in real life, and go from there. So I'm going to take a quick sip of water, and we're going to click the generate button. So we got sports management as our genre. The rule is death is the new beginning. The setting is another planet, and the theme is prejudice. And so if you haven't seen my videos before, I've actually done a brainstorm very similar to this concept. So I'm going to generate again if no one minds. And we got open world 1 HP. So genre is open world, rule is 1 HP, setting is mythology, and the theme is technology gone nuts. That seems like a very fun space to design. So now we will reset our timer and begin thinking. So open world, earlier in this live stream we talked about the explorers. So I'm going to take that same concept of, to give a little more design constraint, we have those modular world tiles that thicken those lines up. So we're going to keep that open world concept of each game is going to be randomly generated differently. And thinking about the 1 HP style is that you can't lose life, obviously. And so with technology gone nuts, I'm thinking that each person is going to come in some form of power suit or something like that, where I'm going to keep rambling while I draw the rest of this board map, and I won't sing because I don't think anyone likes my singing voice, but I'm going to ramble until, unless I can draw quicker, find that if I sketch too fast, it becomes some gobbledygook, and no one likes looking at that. And so, boom. All right, so we have our world maps that are randomly generated, and potentially there is different terrain. We'll go into a medium thickness. Let's see how that looks for dividing into, so there's this different type of terrain that populates the map, and everyone's going to start in a corner space for the number of people playing, and there are designated spots that have something, but there's 2 on each map, and once those designated spots have been explored and claimed, the game will end. And we need 3 more because we said 8. So we have those, and then we have dead air. It's never good air. Sorry, I'll keep rambling. But so we got our 8 that relate to each of the stars on the map, and so maybe we'll leave it up to the player's choice. Michaela's in chat. She said she likes my singing voice. Well, I guess I'm not ready to sing to the audience today. Maybe I need a little liquid courage in me or something like that. But let's get back on track. So there's 8 objective locations for each game, and once all those have been, each one, there'll be a market of different scoring conditions that you can claim. And I'm going a little slow with the design process today. But we've got our map built, so it's pre-generated. There'll be different terrain that you have to move through, and to keep with the explorer's theme, as you move your token, you'll exit out as you start, and everyone gets a different color marker. And as you move and change terrain, there is an event that, so this is a move to new biome event, and this is the so I'm not going to be able to flesh all of them out in the next 30 seconds, but I'm thinking that the game has 4 different decks that you shuffle up to begin with to start the game, and then instead of having your own personal map, there's a global map that you have, and the 4 decks are scoring bonuses, and then there are mythic monsters, and there are move to a new biome, and then there's tech. Alright, the timer is off, so unfortunately we have to stop with this brainstorming today, but we'll recap where we got to and talk about what my next steps would be. Unfortunately, we did not come up with a game that is ready to be tabled immediately. It would involve more designing or fleshing out of the concept before we could test it. But what we have ended up with is our prompt was an open world 1 HP mythology gone, or with the setting being mythology and the theme being technology gone nuts. And so my idea is that there would be the 8 scoring objectives out for the round, and those can be claimed when you move on to a star. And each of these decks would be shuffled, but the top card of the deck would be face up. And so there would be, on your turn, you're crossing out one hex or square space next to you per turn. And you would do that until all of the stars have been claimed, which are the scoring objectives. And that's like the core framework of how the game would work, is you would alternate taking turns to cross off to explore different locations in this open world. And when you go from biome to biome, there would be an event that you have to suffer. And that would be public to everyone, so they know when they need to time hop to get through the different areas, and it'd be a very tactics-based game. The tech would be what you can acquire. Maybe there'd be treasure chests that populate on the map, and so this would be a special moving power. So instead of going, maybe the first level is diagonal, or if you're exploring, say, the desert, you get 2 X's. There'd be different powers for movement that you could claim once each area would potentially have a treasure trove of tech to collect. And then the last deck would be the mythic monsters. So if you have completed and filled in an entire section of the same terrain, that is what would summon the mythic monster, and you would have to defeat it in some way. And what that means is if you defeat it, it would have some sort of point value, so VP, to conquering that monster. And potentially, when you cross, alright, maybe that, I'm glad we went a little long and short in the other one, because my thought is that you'd have your player board of the 4 resource types, and everyone would have like a starting level that they'd start at, that you could come up with those, but I'm rambling, so let's clean this up. But each X that you cross off on a section of the map charges that resource type. So if we're in the blue section, you would bump up the blue power. And in order to defeat the monster, it would need some form of energy spent from your technology superpower in order to conquer it. So say this is 2, so we got a blue, red, yellow, and green, sure. So this is a little bigger. In order to vanquish this monster, it would need a green, a blue, a red, and a yellow. And in order to summon that monster, you need to close off that terrain section to summon it. And then you would spend those resources on your like little player board to conquer that monster and score the victory points for endgame. And so there'd be, at the end of the game, you'd score the number of monsters that you have vanquished, as well as any scoring bonuses that you've collected by going to these little star areas and collecting those star areas. That would trigger the end of the game. And so the main structure of it would be to move an X and gain the resources, or to Yeah, so move an X and gain the resources, and you can modify that by the tech that you've collected over time by gaining the X symbol, or the treasure symbol on the map. And tech allows you to mark up the map in different ways, and if you make it to the end of because it's a 1 HP game, if you're ever locked out where you've trapped yourself and you can't make an X anymore, you would lose. Or if you complete a biome and can't conquer the monster, you would also lose immediately as well. And so it's a survival game that if the team, like all the players, make it to the end of the game, you would add up total points, or it's the last one to survive that wins. So I think that's a good packaged explanation of what the game is. Please let me know what your thoughts are on this game, if it would be a fun game that you'd like to play. Please leave comments below of what you think of this brain dump of a game concept from our prompt of open world, 1 HP, mythology, technology gone nuts prompt. And I'd love to engage in furthering developing this game in the comments below. If you like this type of content, please subscribe. I go live every Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and then you can expect re-uploads of each video segment every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday starting maybe next month. And if you're watching this in April, which it is, you can expect for those in May. But if you're watching past May, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday is the upload schedule. So I'd love to hear from you, so please follow if you like the content. With that, I'm going to switch to back camera, and I'm going to say goodbye to everyone watching live. Goodbye, everybody watching live. Hope you have a great